Welcome along to Brands Hatch, everybody. It's day 2 here. Round 7 of the 2024 Championship is coming up, and it's our second pit stop race of the weekend. Well, we had plenty of racing action here yesterday at Brands Hatch, so let's look back at some of the highlight from yesterday. And as the pace begins to build and they head over the start-finish line this time through, in fact it's Tom Rawlings who starts from pole position, not Charlotte Gilbert. I've just picked up on that based on the starting drivers. Up towards Paddock Hill Bend they'll go for the first time, and hopefully everybody will be safely through the first corner. So he'll be more than pleased with that. Now, Paul Bailey has got himself right up onto terms here with the GCAT Racing Porsche of Seamus Jennings. This will be for 4th and 5th position. Group GTO Brabham closing in on Group GT3 Porsche. No, but Charles Dawson has been able to sneak his way through and finally get past and ahead of Chris Hart. So that will now put the number 31 Team Parker Racing Mercedes for Top Cats Racing. It's going to be an overall win in round 5 of the 2024 GT Cup Championship. Over the start-finish line comes the Lamborghini Super Trofeo. Wait for the arrival of Ian Logie, who only second now at the wheel of the green Mercedes, heads over the start-finish line to finish in 2nd position and claim top honours in Group GTO, with Richard Chamberlain coming through, the matter of a couple of seconds later, to finish in 3rd place overall. And Paul Bailey, on the run to the line, was right alongside Seamus Jennings. Did he get the Brabham's nose ahead? Well, the timing screen at the moment is saying that Seamus Jennings in the Porsche by 23 thousandths of a second. Lights go out, 40 minutes are on the clock. We get round 6 of the championship underway, and as they head up towards Paddock Hill Bend for the first time, Richard Chamberlain is going to brave it out around the outside. He is, because he needs to cover off the green Mercedes that sits behind him, which is Richard Neary, because Richard Neary, by the look of things, is going to move to 2nd and take the early lead of Group GTO. That's an off, I'm afraid, and that is going to be Stephen Walton that's had a problem. That's coming out of Clearways Corner. Park at 45 degrees. And then, because we are in the 19th minute of the race, he can come into the pit lane, Paul Bailey. Off's coming the rear bodywork, which hopefully isn't cause for concern. Maybe the... So, into the pit lane comes Richard Neary. Ian Logie about to jump on board that car, as Seb Morris should go through and ahead of Michael Arant. Yes, he does. Through goes the Team Parker Racing number 31 Mercedes. 29.6 seconds is the lead advantage, and that lap that we've just seen for David Brabham, fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 23.549. That is 2 seconds quicker than Greg Caton could manage at the wheel of the Porsche last time through. Richard Neary and Ian Logie win what will be round 6 of the 2024 GT Cup Championship here at Brands Hatch, with a mega performance from the pair of them. So a quick look back at some of the highlights from yesterday, but the cars have early come out of the pit lane, are already on their formation lap. So it is the number 6 Team ABBA Racing Mercedes that starts on pole position. Paul Bailey lining up alongside. We'll give you all the starting drivers in due course, but we're about to get round 7 of the championship underway. Our second pit stop race of the weekend is about to go green here at Brands Hatch. The Mercedes gets a really good start by the look of things. He's going to lead the charge up towards Paddock Hill Bend for the first time, with Paul Bailey slotting in 2nd position at the wheel of the Brabham. They turn their way through Paddock Hill, and by the look of things, there's a little bit of contact. Through 360 degrees goes Charles Dawson, and I think the car that made slight contact with him there was possibly the number 11, the McLaren Artura, in the hands of Michael Arant. So it looks as though Charles Dawson is going to have a lot of work to do to work his way back up through the field. Other starting drivers to pick up on. The number 6 car started by Ian Logie. So that's only just received that confirmation. So it's Ian Logie that leads the way. Paul Bailey there in 2nd place. Seamus Jennings in the Porsche is in 3rd place. Miles Rudman is 4th and is the early leader of Group GTC in this stage for the Cup specification cars. The Porsche is slightly outgunned and performed by the likes of the Lamborghini Super Trofeo cars, but that's not stopping in the early stages of this one. Miles Rudman, new to GT racing this year, having been a 3 times UK Legends champion. He's going beautifully well, and the early leader in Group GTH is going to be the number 9 Aston Martin, in the hands of Matthew Higgins. Himself and Mikey Porter have done great things so far this year. But as it's the pit stop race, we've not only got the pit stops to consider, we've got the success seconds to consider, and also the fact whether they are sporting drivers paired with sporting drivers, whether we've got a pro sporting driver in there or a full pro, because depending on what your driver combination is, and depending on how you got on in yesterday's pit stop race, that all dictates how long you have to remain in the pit lane area for come the pit stop windows. And we'll guide you through all of that as the race begins to unfold. Ray Harris at the wheel of his Ginetta has moved to Group GTC for today. He's just gone through and ahead of the number 69 car, which is Stephen Walton, who was starting that one. That car was involved in a lap 1 incident yesterday and spun towards the tail end of the field. Very light damage to the car, not much at all, so they'll be hoping that they can have a cleaner race today. And also it'll be a full race today as well. It was a slightly shortened distance yesterday because of qualifying issues that delayed all of the timetable for the rest of the day at Brands Hatch. Charles Dawson making progress as well, through and past Doc Bush. He has gone. So he was the one that was tipped into the spin at the first corner by what I believed was Michael Arant, and I sort of can semi-confirm that on the basis that Michael has just brought the McLaren Artura into the pit lane on that lap. So maybe there was a little bit of damage to the front of the McLaren following that contact. Warren Gilbert at the wheel of the number 3 Top Cats Racing Lamborghini, having a good little fight with the E46 GTR BMW in the hands of Chris Murphy. Warren trying to wiggle his way through and past the BMW, having started off the back of the pack. Warren's only going to do a couple of laps in this one, largely to get a lap time in so he can compete in the sprint race later on, because the fastest lap time you set in this race gives us the grid for the sprint race later on. And off and through the gravel trap has gone Ian Logie. So the man who was leading the way has gone off through the gravel trap. That was at Clearways Corner, which now means that the Brabham in the hands of Paul Bailey leads the way. So Paul Bailey leading. That will mean that also Seamus Jennings at the wheel of his Porsche moves up into second position, and Ian Logie down into third place. Ian, who is, as strange as it sounds, still getting used to the Mercedes, largely because, you know, he's done loads of seat time in Mercedes GT3 cars over the years, but last weekend he was racing in a 24-hour race in a Porsche for Herbert Motorsport out in Portimao. And chatting to him earlier this morning, he did say that it's taking a while to switch his brain back into Mercedes mode. As you can imagine, the way the Porsche delivers a lap time, rear-engined, compared to the way the Mercedes front-engine delivers a lap time, very, very different. Different circuit, different car, and it's now trying to almost relearn the Mercedes again, he was saying, which sounds quite bizarre considering how much time he's spent in a Merc over the years, but I do get it. So now, having lost the lead of the race, he is hunting down a Porsche to a very similar specification to he would have driven last weekend out in mainland Europe. So Seamus Jennings at the wheel of the GCAT Racing Porsche, running in Group GT3, being hunted down by the Mercedes that runs in Group GTO. Then we've got the Group GTC leading car, which is still Miles Rudman, still showing a clean pair of heels to the moment for Charlotte Gilbert. Miles Rudman will stop in the pit lane for 75 seconds come the pit window. The Lamborghini of Charlotte Gilbert, giving way to Tom Rawlings, will stop for 80, and there is the damage to Michael Arant's Paddock Motorsport McLaren Artura. Just light damage to the front right-hand corner, which does suggest that, yeah, probably turn 1 was where there was that little bit of contact, whatever happened between himself and and Charles Dawson. Paul Bailey, in the meantime, though, at the wheel of the glorious sounding Brabham, continues on his way, sharing the car with David Brabham, who we are hoping to have a VT from over the course of this afternoon at some point, because it's a very special place, Brands Hatch, for the Brabham family generally, particularly as the start-finish line is named after his father, the late, great Jack Brabham. So the fight is certainly on, isn't it, now, for second and third place? Ian Logie trying to make amends for whatever befell him when he skittered off into the gravel trap at Clearways Corner, trying to see whether he can squeeze his way through and ahead of the car that leads the GT3 charge at the moment. Ian Logie with a bit more pace down the short Derek Minter straight, but because it's so short, he can't squeeze his way up the inside, heading in towards Westfield Corner. A flash of the lights, anything to try and put Seamus Jennings off, but the Northern Irishman's not buying into that, so he still continues to hang on to second place, whilst the third place Group GTO Mercedes sits behind at the moment. Miles Rudman still continuing to lead Group GTC, but he's still being shadowed by the Lamborghini, the Top Cats Racing car in the hands of Charlotte Gilbert. And now this is Ian Loggie's opportunity to draw himself alongside Seamus Jennings. The Mercedes has got the inside line. He is still side by side on the run up towards Paddock Hill Bend, but the Merc's got the inside line. The ABBA Racing Mercedes goes through and ahead of the GCAT Porsche. So a shuffle for second and for third place. And now that Ian Logie has got that job done, the next job is to see whether he can close up the 10.6 seconds that he is now behind the race leader Paul Bailey. Now, the one good thing for Ian Logie and Richard Neary is that when they come into the pits, when the pit stop window opens for their group of cars, they will remain in the pit lane area stationary for there or thereabouts 18 seconds. It takes 20 seconds to drive down the pit lane at the pit lane speed limit, plus the time that you need to remain stationary, plus any success seconds. So because Ian Logie and Richard Neary are two sporting drivers, two AMs in reality, it's 60 seconds, but because they won their group yesterday, they get an extra 20 added on, so 80 seconds in the pit lane area for them. When Paul Bailey gives way to David Brabham, well, they finished second in their group yesterday, but David Brabham is still classed as a pro driver, so it's 85 seconds when you've got a pro in the car, plus 15 seconds for finishing second in the group yesterday. They'll remain stationary for 100 seconds, 20 seconds longer than the second place Mercedes, and the Merc is only 10 seconds back. So come the pit stops, arguably, the Mercedes should go back ahead of the Brabham, and then it's up to David Brabham to try and hunt it down again in part two of the race. Miles Rudman still working hard at the wheel of his Team Parker Racing Porsche. The Top Cats racing with Hex.com Lamborghini, running to Super Trofeo specification in the hands of Charlotte Gilbert sitting behind. This is for 4th and 5th overall, but more importantly, it's for 1st and 2nd in Group GTC. And the 3 times Legend champion, the little 5/8 scale motorcycle engine cars, has adapted from Legends racing to sports car racing beautifully well. Good battle going on in Group GTH as well. The 2 Morpheus Racing Mercedes are at the moment one in front of, one off behind the SVG Motorsport Leona Theobald driven Ginetta. So the Merc ahead is the 69 car, that's Stephen Walton. The Merc behind is the 96 car, which is John Curry's car. So very different, or similar liveries I ought to say, on the 2 Mercedes. The way to tell them apart is that one has the green 3-pointed star on the front, the other one has the silver one. That's the way to tell them apart. The 69 has the green flashes to the front as well, and the 96 has the silver flashes on the front corners of the wings. So the liveries look very similar, but you can see there are subtle differences between them. And now John Curry and Leona Theobald and Stephen Walton are all starting to get reeled in by the white and light blue Team Parker Racing Mercedes in the hands of Charles Dawson, who's on a bit of a charge following what unfolded with him at turn number 1. He's partnered up with Seb Morris. Seb Morris is classified as a pro, so 85 seconds in the pit lane for them, but they also finished second in their group yesterday, so they pick up an extra 15 success seconds. So they'll be in the pit lane area for 100 seconds, which is going to be about 60 seconds longer than the cars that he's trying to hunt down. Oh, sorry, 40 seconds longer than the cars he's trying to hunt down. So Charles Dawson knows he's got to get on with it, and even if he passes these 3 cars, come the pit stop window, they'll all get back past him again, rather frustratingly. Looks as though Chris Murphy has a problem, so the Woodrow Motorsport E46 of Chris Murphy destined for the pit lane, surely. Yeah, so something's happened with that car. It all looks fine from the outside, but clearly something has gone wrong with his car, so he'll be destined for the pit lane. Now, we've had the first 10 minutes of the race. The squabble that we're looking at the moment is going to be for 10th, 11th, 12th and 13th places, which is going to be for ultimately 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th in Group GTH, which is for those cars that comply with the GT4 homologation. So cars that potentially you could see racing in not just GT Cup, but in other GT championships around Europe in the GT4 category, or even the European GT4 series. And you can see that the balance of performance means that, yeah, there's nothing to choose between the pace of Ginettas and Mercedes. Charles Dawson with a much better exit coming out of Surtees, and that could put John Curry under pressure. John is the 3rd car in the train. The white and the light blue car of Charles Dawson was close to him, but he's not going to be able to do anything about it when they head their way round through the right-hander at Hawthorne. And whatever the problem was with the BMW, it does look as though Chris Murphy, I'm afraid, is out of the car, and therefore will be out of the race. So that's one Group GTC car we've lost, and we've also had a shuffle for the lead of Group GTC because Charlotte Gilbert at the wheel of the Lamborghini has gone through and ahead of Miles Rudman. So it's the number 2 Lamborghini now that moves up into 4th position. And that will also put her into the lead of Group GTC. Miles Rudman trying hard, but he did say to me when I was chatting to him at breakfast this morning that he's used to the way Legends work, because they're shorter races when you race in Legends. You've got to get on it straight away. So he's used to driving that way and gets on it straight away. But he's well aware that once the Lamborghini gets warmed up, that's when it comes into its own. And here we are a few laps in, and all of a sudden, the Lamborghini's finding the pace. Charles Dawson trying around the outside of John Curry. The outside line at Druids would give him the inside line when they get down towards Graham Hill Bend, but he can't quite make it stick there. Got onto some of the dirty tarmac on the outside of Druids. The car just washed that little bit wide, so that is not the opportunity that he's looking for. He'll have to gather his thoughts, see if he can work out somewhere else where he can try and squeeze his way through. So again, last time through, Charles was very quick coming out of Surtees. We've also got Leona Theobald at the wheel of the Ginetta, who is edging ever closer to Stephen Walton at the wheel of the number 69 Morpheus Racing Mercedes. So they're still close to each other, but we've not had as yet a change in the order. Out of Hawthorne Bend, very fast corner. You carry a lot of speed through Hawthorne. It's a very banked section of the circuit, which the cameras don't really show you. And then from there, after Westfield, you head downhill through Dingle Dell and up towards Stirlings, where the circuit earlier on this week was re-tarmacked through this section. Through the right-hander at Stirlings, through the right-hander at Sheen, the left-hander at Stirlings, and then after you go underneath the vehicle bridge, when you just rejoin the Indy circuit, that's where the new section of tarmac ends again. And you can see the slightly darker line there as they head back onto the lighter tarmac, which is the slightly older surface. And most of the drivers were saying in the dry conditions yesterday, it's nice and flat through Sheen Curve and Stirlings, and also very, very grippy on that new tarmac as Charles Dawson this time dives at the inside of John Curry, heading in towards Paddock Hill Bend, squeezes his way through on the entry, but then gives up a little bit of time on the exit, and John Curry gets the undercut, goes back through, reasserts himself for the moment, back into the third position in this little four-car group, all fighting, of course, over positions in Group GTH. But it's still third in Group GTH for Stephen Walton, fourth in Group GTH for Leona Theobald, fifth once more for John Curry, and back down to sixth for Charles Dawson. Here's a quick replay of the start. Nice start from Ian Logie. Paul Bailey matching him for pace, but look in the background as to what happens when Charles Dawson, does he get tagged into a spin by the McLaren? Yes, he does. A little bit of contact as Charles Dawson turns in on the McLaren that was there, and through 360 degrees he goes. A little bit of damage to the McLaren brought Michael Arant into the pits. No clear obvious signs of damage for Charles Dawson, who is still sticking with the task in hand. And now we've got traffic starting to play a factor as well. So Charles Dawson finally managed to squeeze his way through and ahead of John Curry. The next target will be Leona Theobald at the wheel of the SVG Motorsport Ginetta, the G56, but she is tasked also with trying to squeeze her way through and ahead of Stephen Walton's car. You could just see the nose of Warren Gilbert's Lamborghini there. Not surprised that car is in, because Warren is only doing the sprint races. He just needs to set a time in this race, a lap time, to enable him to grid up properly for the sprint race. So we were always expecting him to be in the pit lane. As Charles Dawson has another little nibble. He got at the inside of John Curry last time through at this similar part of the circuit. Couldn't quite manage to squeeze through it ahead of Leona Theobald. And now the difficulty is for Charles Dawson. He tries to attack. Instantly, he is having to defend because he loses a little bit of time on the exit of the corner, which brings John Curry back into the mix once more. Fantastic fight this still is for what will be 9th, 10th, 11th and 12th places overall. And if you look in the background, Doc Bush is not that far away at the wheel of his Group GTC Team Parker Racing Porsche, the silver car with almost the Martini-esque stripe down the centre of it. Speeds build again as they head out of Surtees, then through Pilgrim's Drop and start to climb up Hawthorne Hill towards the very fast right-hander at Hawthorne. John Curry, if anything now, just dropping away from the little trio of GTH cars that lie ahead. Doc Bush continually closing in on them as well. Former motorcycle racer is Doc, and has done even some of the endurance races round here at Brands Hatch in the past. So, flash of the lights again from Charles Dawson as he tries to wiggle his way through if at all he can. We're still about 5 minutes away from any of the pit windows opening, I'd have thought. Let's have a quick look. What is it? 26 minutes to go. So about 8 minutes away from the first of the pit windows opening. So for today, those cars that run in Group GTH and Group GTA have to pit between the 24th and the 29th minute of the race, i.e. if you look at the countdown timer at the top of the screen, when there's between 26 and 21 minutes to go. If you're running Group GTO, Group GT3 or Group GTC, those are the cars that are running towards the sharp end as Charles Dawson tries all the way around the outside at Druids on Leona Theobald and can't get the job done. Those cars that are running towards the sharp end, they pit between the 29th and the 35th minute of the race, i.e. when there's between 21 and 15 minutes to go as Charles Dawson finally gets through and ahead of the Ginetta. Another place gained, and now that the door is open, John Curry is trying to squeeze his way through as well, so Leona Theobald needs to be careful here. She's lost one place, she could lose two, she has lost two. And they're all about to be lapped by Paul Bailey at the wheel of the hugely rare Brabham BT62. Sounds absolutely glorious. Waves his arm out the window. I'm not sure whether that was a thank you or in frustration, but Charles Dawson wanted to get on with it. It's up to the quicker cars to pick their way through the slower ones, and Charles Dawson didn't want to ease off at all because, of course, he was trying to make progress himself following what happened on lap number 1. Worth mentioning that Brabham is running a sustainable fuel this weekend as well, which of course is something that motorsport generally needs to look at and does continue to look at inwardly at itself as to how it can reduce its impact on the environment, and certainly the Brabham is well aware of that with the sustainable fuel that's running this weekend. Right, Charles Dawson is back on it again. Can he squeeze his way through and ahead of Stephen Walton? The Team Parker Racing Porsche almost alongside, has the inside line, and again, perfect overtaking opportunity for Charles Dawson. He really is very keen on the brakes at Paddock Hill Bend and very confident. Stephen Walton is trying to fight back on the run up towards Druids, but can't quite work his magic, so it does look as though the Team Parker Mercedes has gone through and ahead of the Morpheus car. Taken a while, but Charles Dawson has overtaken 3 cars there, 4 position, and each one of them in his group as well. So that will now put Charles Dawson further up through the order, and there is a spin, and that is coming out of Westfield Corner where Charlotte Gilbert has a spin. She was leading Group GTC, and that surely now means that she may well have lost the position again to Miles Rudman, who may well have gone back through because it seemed to take a while to get the number 2 Top Cats Racing Lamborghini fired back up there following the spin. The car that's behind her is Ray Harris, the Ginetta G55, so I think, yeah, she's certainly lost out to Miles Rudman. She's lost out to Matthew Higgins at the wheel of the Group GTH leading Forsetti Aston Martin, and Charlotte Gilbert will come over the start-finish line now in 6th position rather than 4th. So lost 2 places and, more importantly, lost the lead of the group. We've also had another shuffle, have we not? Because John Curry at the wheel of the second of the Morpheus Racing Mercedes is now through and ahead of Leona Theobald. So that has happened on that lap as well. And whilst all of these GTH cars are squabbling, they've now also got Ian Loggy closing in on them at the wheel of what is the 2nd place Mercedes overall. So the Group GTO Merc should be able to ease its way through and past this traffic, but equally as much they're not going to make it easy because they're having their own individual squabble and they don't want to lose time relative to the cars that they're doing battle with. So it's again up to the number 6 ABBA Racing Mercedes to pick its moment and thread its way past the traffic, which certainly should be on the Cooper Straight, one would have thought. Yet, so Ian Loggy using all of that experience that he's got as a former British GT champion to squeeze his way through and past Leona Theobald's car. Waited for the opportunity to do so and did it when the car has the advantage, which is in a straight line, the GT3 cars, with a lot more power and a lot more aero than the GT4 spec cars that run in Group GTH. So we're still about 4 minutes away from the pit window opening for these cars in Group GTH and the McLaren 570S from Jolt Racing that runs in Group GTA. They will be the first batch of cars to pit today. The 2 Morpheus Racing Mercedes have certainly matched for pace, are they not? With Stephen Walton and John Curry absolutely together still. Still just Stephen Walton ahead of John Curry. Stephen Walton will hand his car over to Chris Hart, whereas John Curry will hand the car over to Marcus Clutton. But because Marcus Clutton is a pro, it does mean that that number 96 Mercedes will spend longer in the pit lane. It will be in the pit lane area stationary for about 85 seconds. For Stephen Walton, when he gives way to Chris Hart, they'll be stationary for 25 seconds less. 60 seconds. And it does all even out because, you know, that then means that Marcus Clutton, as the pro, has to try and make that 25 seconds up in his driving stint. So again, attack, but you also need to defend at the same time. So John Curry, mindful of the fact that he wants to get through and ahead of his teammate if he can. He won't want to make contact with teammate, the cardinal sin, but equally as much if the door is open, Leona Theobald at the wheel of the number 86 Ginetta would be poised and ready to squeeze his way through. And there is Chris Hart ready to take over. That's number 69 Mercedes, as of when Stephen Walton comes into the pit lane. But that's still going to be a lap, maybe a couple of laps away as yet. So there's still work to be done. There's still mirrors to be watched as well, as the Porsche of Seamus Jennings is beginning to close in on this squabbling trio now. Seamus won't catch them at Hawthorne, but might be able to get onto the coattails of the Ginetta as they head along the Derek Minter Straight. But again, he's not going to be close enough even when they get towards the right-hander at Westfield. So Seamus Jennings might just have to keep his powder dry and pick his moment where he's going to go through. He's going to try it at Dingle Dell and up towards Sheen Curve. No, not quite. So just has to be patient, which is what endurance racing is all about when it's multi-class endurance racing. And then he should be able to ease his way through and past the Ginetta on the run down out of Stirling's towards Clearways Corner. So that's one of the GTH cars dealt with. Should be able to pick off the two Morpheus Racing Mercedes over the start-finish line, but they're having their own individual squabble, and John Curry here is looking to try and make it three wide. Seamus Jennings goes around the outside. John Curry was trying to get up the inside of his teammate Stephen Walton, but couldn't quite do it in the end. And now he backs off a little bit heading in towards Paddock Hill Bend. Once more, Leona Theobald comes back into the mix at the wheel of the SVG Motorsport Ginetta G56. And they're all getting caught now by Doc Bush at the wheel of his Team Parker Racing Porsche that runs in Group GTC. Doc is 13th overall. Paul Bailey still continuing to lead in the Brabham. 15.2 seconds to the good from Ian Loggy in second place, and there's a further 13 seconds back now to Seamus Jennings in the Porsche, who's there in third place. Miles Rudman is in fourth at the moment. He leads Group GTC for the Cup specification cars. And Miles has a good chunk of daylight between himself and Charlotte Gilbert, who is fifth overall and second in Group GTC. She's 18 seconds back following her spin whilst leading Group GTC at Westfield. So this is still the closest battle that we've got on track at the moment. 10th, 11th, 12th position, Mercedes, Ginetta. And then the 13th place car of Doc Bush not too far away. But I don't think any of the cars are going to be able to dive into the pit lane this time through, because 26 minutes to go is when the window opens. And if you break the beam at pit lane entry before that, you're going to be pitting outside of the window, and they're not quite going to get there in time. So they're all going to have to continue round for a further lap as they pass the Jolt Racing McLaren of Rupert Williams, who stays well and truly out of harm's way. New team to the championship for this year, Jolt Racing. Rupert Williams, fairly inexperienced when it comes to motorsport, certainly hasn't driven anything as powerful as the McLaren in the past. As again, Leona Theobald looks to see whether she can sneak up the inside of John Curry, but again, showing the nose is one thing, having the opportunity to be close enough to overtake up the inside is another, and she just wasn't there and she knew it. So the pit window is now open for those cars that run in Group GTH and Group GTA. So we could well see these cars here dive for the pit lane at the end of this lap. The Porsche can't, in the hands of Doc Bush. He's got to wait until there are just 21 minutes to go as an absolute minimum. But into the pit lane, by the look of things, Jake Poole is about to jump on board the McLaren that was in the hands of Michael Orant. That's the car that had the damage to the front right-hand corner following turn one and lap one. So Michael's out of the car and looks understandably a little bit disappointed with the way that the race panned out for himself and Paddock Motorsport. Jake Poole will jump on board, whilst the Brabham BT62 in the hands of Paul Bailey still continues to lead the way. Stunning looking car. It sounds absolutely beautiful as well. Very rare as well. One that's been racing in Europe. David Brabham, I think, has an example. Paul Bailey's got the example, but there aren't many more than that. And now we can see, yeah, everybody's dived for the pit lane. So the two Forsetti Motorsport Aston Martins are in. The number 10 car, Jodie Sloss, giving way to Rihanna O'Meara Hunt, the Kiwi. We could also see Matthew Higgins was in to give way to Mikey Porter. Trying its way back out of pit lane is Michael Orant, having given way to Jake Poole. So the reason that car is out there earlier than the rest is because it only needed to remain stationary for 60 seconds. The number 10 Aston Martin will remain stationary for 80, and the number 9 car will remain stationary for 90 because of its success seconds it picked up yesterday. Ian Loggy still continuing to lead the way. Paul Bailey can't head into the pit lane for at least another couple of laps as yet. So the fantastic soundtrack of the Brabham continues. Leona Theobald came into the pit lane. She is busy strapping in James Townsend. James, who has been a long time Ginetta racer, as has Leona as well. Started in the likes of Ginetta Juniors and then moved over to the G40 Cup, or GT5 as it was, and then raced in Super Cup last year. Also see Charles Dawson, after what was a good stint from him, didn't quite all go to plan with the 360-degree spin involved at the first corner with that little bit of contact, but good recovery drive from Charles. He'll be disappointed but pleased that they've still got the pace, and now it is up to former British GT champion Seb Morris to see what he can do in part two of the race. Morpheus Racing losing time here in the pit lane as Chris Hart can't quite get enough steering lock on to avoid the sister car. So time lost there for that car, and you can now see it has affected it because it's been jumped in the pit lane by the Ginetta in the hands of James Townsend, and that was an off for Jake Poole. That looked as though that was coming out of Stirling's Bend. Lots and lots of dirt and grass and detritus all over the track as a result of what I could imagine was Jake Poole just running very, very wide coming out of Stirling's. That'll take a while to clean up those Pirellis. But the former Caterham racer, I'm sure, will get them clean and keep pressing on regardless in this race. Seb Morris now out, so he could well be one to watch in this one. It's been a good start to the season for the Team Parker Racing Mercedes. Let's just have a quick look. So here comes Jake Poole up towards Stirling's on the brakes and then turns the car in, and it just runs very, very, very wide. You're all over the grass, all over the gravel, keeps his foot in, and on the freshly cut grass here at Brands Hatch, you can see just how much that has deposited onto the circuit. What has it deposited onto the front of the McLaren is the big question, because it's a warm day here at Brands Hatch. If you have filled your radiator ducts with gravel and dirt, that could present a problem for you. The other thing I just spotted there, I think, was the front right-hand corner of Miles Rudman's Porsche, the number 12 car. Something just looked as though it was hanging off on the front right-hand corner of the number 12 car. So Ian Loggy at the wheel of the Team ABBA Racing Mercedes, second overall at the moment, has just set the fastest lap of the race so far that we've seen. Ian Loggy, 1 minute 26.341 from the Mercedes. That means that the lead advantage to the race-leading Brabham is now down to 16.4 seconds. And remember, it needs to stay below 20 seconds because we know the Brabham is going to remain stationary in the pit lane for 100 seconds, whereas this Mercedes is going to remain stationary for 80 seconds. So 16 seconds behind, they will stop for 20 seconds shorter in the pit lane. So it's critical that Ian Loggy keeps pushing hard because the race could well come to them in this race. And it's also worth mentioning that the Brabham has had some issues. It had gearbox issues. It lost fifth gear yesterday. So what the team did was take out fifth gear, take out sixth gear, put the sixth gear where fifth gear would be, put the fifth gear that was broken where sixth gear would be, and reprogram the car so that it only thinks it's got 5 gears. So as a result of that, in reality, what's happening in that Brabham is that they're going from fourth, having to rev the car really hard, shift up a gear, and it goes to what is sixth, but sixth is in the position of fifth as far as the car is concerned. So Paul Bailey really happy with that. And David Brabham, former Formula One driver, of course, both with the family team with Brabham and returned to Formula One for the rather ill-fated and sad season with Simtech Racing when he lost his teammate Roland Ratzenberger. He jumps on board the car. And amazingly, it is today, the 19th of May 2024, exactly 10 years to the day since Jack Brabham died, David's father. And rather than it be a sad day, he's saying it's celebrating 10 years of 10 years of his fast passing, but 10 years of what was a fantastic life for Jack Brabham, who was well known in these parts around Brands Hatch. So he's about to dive on board. Very successful career at Le Mans as well in sports car racing for David Brabham. Also was very successful over in the American Le Mans series as well. Into the pit lane comes Seamus Jennings at the wheel of the GCAT Racing Porsche. Greg Caton scheduled to jump on board that car. That will also remain stationary in the pit lane for 80 seconds. So it is going to potentially leapfrog the Brabham, or certainly get closer to it than it was prior to the pit stop window. Charlotte Gilbert is also in to give way to Tom Rawlings. That sounds like a very poorly McLaren there heading round through Druids. Lots of strange noises being made on that McLaren. So David Brabham back down pit road, but he is coming out behind the Mercedes that's now in the hands of Richard Neary. So out onto the circuit comes the Brabham, but there is Richard Neary already making his way up towards Druid. So I did say that the Mercedes should leapfrog and get ahead of the Brabham. Well, now the task in hand is for David Brabham, the pro driver, to see whether he can catch up with Richard Neary, who, no disrespect to him, he is an AM driver. You know, he runs a very successful business up in the northwest. Is his day job, and he races cars for fun in reality, as does Ian Logie. And they are now tasked with trying to keep David Brabham and the Brabham BT62 at bay. So what was the gap between the pair of them? It's hovering around 5 seconds when they both came out of pit lane. It was 4.988 to be absolutely precise. So that's exactly what David Brabham needs to do. Bring that gap down and then try and get past. And also, having brought the gap down and trying to get past, it's now James Townsend in the Ginetta who is applying the pressure to Chris Hart, who has taken over the number 69 Morpheus Racing Mercedes. And this will be for position. This is going to be for the final podium spot in Group GTH. Chris Hart has got ahead of James Townsend on the previous lap, and James is trying to return the favour and work his way back through if he can. So those two head along the Cooper Straight. Now, some of the reason that Chris Hart has had to work hard to get back past that Ginetta is the time that was lost in the pit lane, where the team pushed the car back and there still wasn't sufficient lock for Chris to be able to clear the sister car to it. So they had to lose a bit of time there as the team re-pushed the car back. David Brabham, in the meantime, has already taken a bit of time out of Richard Neary in the lead of the race. So we'll keep an eye towards what that gap is, and in the meantime we can go down to the pit lane. Joe Hudson, I think, has managed to catch up with Paul Bailey, who's just jumped out of the Brabham.
Down in the pit lane here with Paul Bailey. Paul, talk us through that first stint.
I was just so focused, so determined. When I saw that it was Ian in the car rather than Richard, I thought I'll have a go, and I pushed him. He came off at clearways and I thought, time to go. And that was it, and the rest of it is history. I just got quicker and quicker every lap. It was phenomenal, I loved it.
I was going to say, and the gap was increasing every lap as well. I mean, you were really pushing that Brabham.
Well, you think I was pushing it, won't you? See Mr. Brabham in the Brabham, he'll be pushing it. No, that's really good. That's one of the best drives I've ever. Nobody catching me, so I could just push as hard as I wanted without having to look in my mirror. So it makes a big difference when you haven't got someone up your chuff. So it was brilliant. I loved it.
And how great is it to be part of, 10-year anniversary since Jack's had passing, with David Brabham, in a Brabham, at Brands Hatch. I mean,
it was just a huge honour when David asked me if we could race together. And I did, so I'm not sure why you want to do that. I'm not the quickest guy out there. And he said, well, you did something right last year. You won all 3 championships. So I want to race with you. So we did a deal, and that was it. And here we are today, doing really well. The pit stop penalty may cost us. We'll have to wait and see.
Oh, no. Thanks, Paul. Hopefully,
Paul
brings
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, and David Brabham is pushing it. He's just set the fastest lap of the race we've seen so far. 1 minute 24.315 from David Brabham, bringing the lead advantage down between himself and Richard Neary, who leads at the wheel of the Mercedes, down to 3.142 seconds this time through. So David Brabham pushing hard. I asked the question of Hannah, who is one of the leading lights in the background of GT Cup, as to whether Paul Bailey whether David Brabham rather is the first Formula 1 driver we've had in GT Cup. I know we've had in the past the likes of Adam Carroll and Darren Turner, who've both tested for BAR and McLaren respectively, modern Formula 1 cars, but never raced them. No was the answer. I'd forgotten. Yeah, Mike Wilds we had, didn't we, racing in GT Cup some time ago. And Mike was a Formula 1 driver back in the 1970s and maybe at the very early part of the 1980s. So David Brabham's not the first, but is one of, just a couple that we've had in GT Cup over the years. Now, he's certainly closed again, hasn't he? The gap is down to 1.5 seconds between himself and Richard Neary. Now, the Brabham is a wide car. The Mercedes is a wide car and is going to be made even wider by Richard Neary as and when David Brabham gets there. There's also traffic just up the road to deal with, which is Miles Rudman, who at the wheel of the number 12 Porsche is still running in 4th place overall and is about to be lapped, such is the pace of the front runners. He's still leading Group GTC miles as well and could be on for his first Group GTC win of the championship season. And as they head up towards Hawthorne, the blue flags are waving to Forward Miles Rudman that the race leaders are approaching. And for Richard Neary, he needs to get on with it here. He ideally wants to get past his Porsche as quickly as he can and try and keep the BT62 behind in the hands of David Brabham. So through Dingle Dell they'll go. The Merc squeezes through and ahead of the Porsche Cup car of Miles Rudman, who then has to gather up a bit of a moment, and the door is left open for David Brabham to squeeze his way through and also place a lap on that 4th place car. So it's only the top 3 now that remain on the lead lap, which is Richard Neary, David Brabham, and then of course Greg Caton at the wheel of the GCAT Racing Porsche, but he is 22 seconds adrift of the Brabham at this stage. So onto the Brabham straight goes David Brabham in the Brabham. 13 minutes remaining. Lead advantage is down to 1.1 seconds, give or take the odd thousandth. And over the course of this lap, you would imagine with no traffic really to affect either car in the early stages of this lap, they should be able to push on as hard as they can. There's Doc Bush, I'm afraid, and that looks like that's potentially the exit of Druids, where he's had the spin. So the car is facing 90 degrees to the circuit, and in the hands of the Antipodean, he needs to get that car fired up once more and try and get it pointing in the right direction. A bit of heat soak might stop that car firing up, but once it's just cooled off a degree or so, it should be good. We've got the Swabble for the lead heading down towards Hawthorne. Doc Bush does get the car fired up and gets on his merry way. And for the lead of the race, I don't think David Brabham was quite close enough as they went round through Hawthorne. Have to wait and see as they come out of Westfield. No, he's still not quite there, is he? So Richard Neary still pushing as hard as he possibly can. Did claim an overall win yesterday in the pit stop race, did Richard Neary and Ian Loggy. When Richard started the car and handed over to Ian, they've decided to carve up the driving duties differently for the pit stop race today. And now for Richard Neary, the next thing is traffic as well, trying to defend from the Brabham, but also trying to work his way past James Townsend and Seb Morris in the Ginetta and the Group GTH Mercedes respectively, because both of them are going to come into play over the course of this lap. And Richard Neary will hope that he has the advantage to be able to squeeze his way through. So he's right on the coattails of the Ginetta, runs a little bit wide mid-corner through Druids, but gets on the power. And is he going to be able to clear the Ginetta by the time to get down towards Graham Hill Bend? Yes, decisively. Up the inside of James Townsend, who tries to stay out of the way. David Brabham squeezes his way through. A flash of the lights from Richard Neary to forewarn the GT4 Mercedes, which is the car that runs in Group GTH, in the hands of Seb Morris, that the race leader is on his way, and he can't afford to be compromised here. In a straight line, you'd think the Brabham might have a bit more grunt than the Mercedes, so Richard Neary might have to go defensive on the run up towards Hawthorne, as David Brabham's going to try as he ran the outside at Hawthorne. No, that would be brave. So he tucks himself back behind the Merc once more, and he's going to have a nibble as they head onto the Derek Minter straight. But again, Richard Neary covers that move off. 11 minutes to go. The fight is certainly on for the lead of the race. David Brabham, again, is not going to try anything as they head through Dingle Dell and up towards Sheen Curve. He'll be knowing already where his car has the advantage over the Group GTO Mercedes. The Mercedes runs in Group GTO, but it is fully compliant with GT3 specifications, so it hasn't got any air restrictors removed from it. They are just running it in GT3 to accumulate points in that category rather than GTO. So for the lead of the race, David Brabham in a straight line is going to ease his way through and by. And there wasn't a great deal that Richard Neary could do about that. The extra grunt of the Brabham BT62 tells, and through to not just pick up the lead of the race, but pick up the lead in Group GTO goes David Brabham. Also another car to deal with as well as he sneaks up the inside of Marcus Clutton's Morpheus Racing Mercedes. So now what can David Brabham do about pulling away and opening up the gap over Richard Neary? So they could run that Mercedes in Group GT3, but it is running in Group GTO for this weekend. There's more entries in Group GTO, so they're likely to pick up more championship points as a result of that, because the points you pick up are subject to the number of starters in your group. So in other words, if you've got 3 starters in the group, if you claim the group win, you get 25 points. If you've only got a couple of starters, it's just 18 points. And so on, it diminishes from there. The more starters you have, the more likely you are to pick up good points. And even for second place, 5 starters in the group would net you 22 points. If there are 3 starters in the group and you finish second, you would only pick up 18. So Richard Neary decisively sneaks his way up the inside of Marcus Clutton. The number 9 Group GTH leading Mikey Porter driven Aston Martin is at the moment comfortably in the lead of Group GTH. It sits there in 6th position overall, the number 9 car. Ray Harris is in 7th, but his Ginetta runs in Group GTC, so you have to look back to 8th place, and we have no Mira Hunt in the sister car to it, who is about 16 seconds adrift in the second of the 2 Aston Martins for the car that's currently 2nd in Group GTH. So again, it looks as though it's another strong run from the pair of youngsters, from Matthew Higgins and Mikey Porter. Puff of the brake as well there, as so hard onto the brakes heading up towards Westfield Corner went Mikey. And Mikey's certainly getting plenty of seat time in Aston Martin cars for this season. Seen him out racing in British GT. Mikey Porter, he was 4th in the Ginetta Junior Championship last year, whereas for Matthew Higgins, he's done a bit of Formula 4 racing in the USA and was runner-up in the Rotex Senior Championship last year. So they're a good young driver pairing for Forseti Motorsport, who will be looking forward to... Oh no, James Townsend in the pit lane with the Ginetta, so clearly something not quite right in the engine bay of the Ginetta. Andy Johnson, the man behind SVG Motorsport, feeling things around the bulkhead area, and Leona Theobald chatting to James, who remains behind the wheel of it, but clearly all is not well with the G56, and looks as though, yeah, off is coming the communications, off is coming the seatbelts, and it does look as though we're going to see the Ginetta into retirement with 7 minutes to go in round 7 of the 2024 GT Cup Championship here at Brands Hatch, in what have been just beautiful conditions, glorious sunshine, very hot and hard work for the drivers behind the wheel, because Brands Hatch isn't one of those circuits where you get a great deal of respite over the course of a lap. When you've got the sun beating through the windscreen, you're pushing hard, you've got your crash helmet and your balaclava and your fireproof overalls and undergarments on. It's a warm place to be. 3rd place, the Group GT3 leading Porsche in the hands of Greg Caton, turning its way out of Druids and down in towards Graham Hill Bend. Haven't seen a great deal of it because, in the nicest way, it's in a little bit of no man's land at the moment. It's sort of 18 seconds off Richard Neary's car, but has a huge amount in hand over the car behind it, which would be Miles Rudman's car, who continues to lead Group GTC, and this number 9 Aston Martin, about to head over the start-finish line, continues to lead Group GTH at the moment, in the hands of Mikey Porter. Might have stopped for slightly longer than some of the other cars in Group GTH, but the pairing of Matthew Higgins and Mikey Porter have been a good one so far this season. Up towards the braking area for Druids. They've had a best overall finish of 6th overall in the Sunday sprint race at Donington Park. Prior to this weekend, they'd had 4 group wins in Group GTH, claiming the group win on each occasion at Donington Park. And yesterday, they claimed a group win in the sprint race. They finished 3rd in the pit stop race. And let's go down to the pit lane. I think Joe Hudson has managed to catch up with somebody else.
Yeah, down in the pits here with Matthew Higgins. Matthew, pitted in the lead, car still retains the lead with a few minutes left to go. How was the stint for you?
Yeah, still really good. For me, it's just all about getting laps. Haven't done much testing or laps in this car, so yeah, every lap is just a learning experience, pushing hard. Once or twice a bit too far, but yeah, that's what it's about. Pushing the limits, and the car to Mikey in the lead, and yeah, he's obviously doing a great job as expected now.
How's the car felt all weekend? I mean, you and the sister car have always been on the pace. It's clearly going well around here.
Yeah, definitely. I think wherever we go, this car's been mega so far. The crew have done an amazing job to get it in tip-top condition.
Oh no, thanks Matthew, much appreciated.
Yeah, good to hear from Matthew Higgins there, say Forseti, who are based on the doorstep of Snetterton. So the next weekend of racing, which is only 2 weekends away before we go racing again, is at Snetterton on the 300 circuit. So literally they can almost afford to roll the cars out of the workshop and they'd be in the pit lane. They are absolutely on the doorstep of the track in Norfolk. And as ever, good job being done by Mikey Porter, having taken over the car from the man we've just heard from Matthew Higgins, turning his way out of Druids and down in towards Graham Hill Bend, running 6th place overall, leading Group GTH at this stage. And as I say, leading it from the sister car, which is the number 10 car that Jody Sloss started and handed over to Rhiannon O'Meara Hunt, the Kiwi for part 2 of the race, and third in Group GTH at the moment is still the number 69 Morpheus Racing car, which is in the hands of Chris Hart now, the Mercedes. Leading overall continues to be the Brabham, the BT62. We've seen it claims wins in the past when it has been shared between Paul Bailey and Ross Wiley, who he raced with last year. Now, Marcus Clutton here is starting to reel in the sister car in the hands of Chris Hart. So Marcus, who was a bit of a late call-up to race this car this weekend. It's usually Phil Keane that John Curry has shared the car with, but Phil is away racing in mainland Europe in another category this weekend. Marcus was on holiday over in the Canary Islands and was scheduled to fly back very late on Thursday night. He did that. He left the Canaries about 10 o'clock. He landed in Liverpool about 1 o'clock in the morning. He got home at 3 o'clock in the morning on Friday morning, but by 8 o'clock in the morning was down at Brands Hatch, having driven from North Wales, and is now about to sneak his way up the inside of the sister car, and he's going to go through. So Marcus Clutton at the wheel of the Morpheus Racing Mercedes goes through and ahead of the sister car of Chris Hart, and with that it now means that he picks up the final podium spot in Group GTH. So the pro driver goes through and ahead of the sporting driver, and that's always the interesting thing, because that number 96 car stopped for 85 seconds in the pit lane. 25 seconds shorter was the car he's just gone through and passed. So that's the kind of pace that the pros have to try and catch up in the second part of the race, and Marcus Clutton has dealt with the task, as you would expect, admirably. A couple of minutes to go, catches up, goes through, and we'll look to now see if he can pull away in what is his newly acquired 9th position overall and 3rd place in Group GTH. The Ginettas back out. Oh, that's good to see. So James Townsend is back out. Whatever the problem was that brought him into the pit lane, the SVG Motorsport crew would appear to have sorted it. So that car has now dropped down to 6th in Group GTH. That will place it 13th overall. And another car that did come into the pit lane a few laps ago and hasn't come back out is the Paddock Motorsport McLaren Artura that was driven by Michael Arant in the first part of the race, handed over to Jake Poole. We saw Jake run wide, didn't we, through Stirling's Bend with the car all through the gravel and the grass. Well, that car did go into the pit lane. We've not subsequently seen it reappear. So whether that was all to do with the damage on the first lap, or whether subsequently there's something else wrong with the car that either put Jake Poole through the gravel or was a result of going through the gravel, we simply don't know. We'll try and bring you an update for the sprint race later on today, but hopefully whatever the problem is won't preclude that car from being out. And there you can see the car already being worked on, and by the look of things being re-prepped by the team, including the man behind the team there, Martin Plowman, who's on the right of the screen. Plowie, a very good driver himself, racing in GTs and raced in the Indy 500 to Martin Plowman. So we're into the final 60 seconds of the race. Richard Neary at the wheel of the 2nd place Team ABBA Racing Mercedes is now 18 seconds adrift of David Brabham. Just going to show the pace that David has had in this one. He's going to be heading on to his final lap of the race next time through, so he just carves his way through Sheen Curve, then through the left-hander at Stirling's, this new recently tarmacked section of the Brands Hatch circuit. As he comes underneath the bridge and onto the Indy circuit, you'll see the darker tarmac change to the lighter tarmac. That's where the new tarmac ends. And with a matter of seconds to go, he could have afforded just to blend off on this lap to save doing a further lap, but with 9 seconds to go, over the start-finish line he goes onto the final lap of the race, and the noise the Brabham BT62 makes as it comes over the start-finish line is absolutely glorious. I'm in an elevated position above it. I've got a headset on, but I can still very clearly hear the immense noise that car makes, and it's so loud it almost distorts the microphones on our cameras as well. It's a fantastic soundtrack, and as we say, you know, that car is considering the environmental impact that it's having in motorsport as well. It's running a sustainable fuel, and I'm sure we'll see generally more whether it be sustainable fuels, albeit this one's bio-based, or synthetic fuels in motorsport, ever more, as the environmental pressures continue to not go away, do they? And rightly so. So out of Hawthorne along the Derek Minter Straight, up towards the right-hander at Westfield Corner, and well, of all of the days for David Brabham to reacquaint himself with the Brabham BT62. Brands Hatch is a special place for the Brabham family. Himself, his brother, his father have all had success here at Brands Hatch over the years. The start-finish line is named after his late father, who 10 years to the day very sadly passed away. But it's not a time for sadness, it's a time for celebration. David Brabham's going to come through and win round 7 of the 2024 GT Cup Championship, partnered up with Paul Bailey, who put a fantastic stint in the early stages. And remember, that car is running not a 5th gear, it's running a 6th gear in the place of 5th gear. Through to claim the top honours in Group GTH will come the number 9 Forseti Aston Martin, Matthew Higgins and Mikey Porter, bringing that car home. Over the start-finish line also comes Ian Loggie and Richard Neary. The 3rd place car of Seamus Jennings and Greg Caton comes through. Ray Harris's Ginetta over the start-finish line. He'll finish in 7th place, 3rd in Group GTC. We haven't as yet had our Group GTC winner come through, because I think that has had a shuffle again in the closing stages. I think the Top Cats Racing Lamborghini that was driven by Charlotte Gilbert and had the spin and has now been handed over to Tom Rawlings has overtaken Miles Rudman. And we've also had a spin by the look of things, and that's for James Townsend in the Ginetta that's had a spin somewhere. Can't quite work out where that is, but the car is beached and is going nowhere at the moment. So that looks as though that is coming out of Graham Hill Bend onto the Cooper Straight, where he's had a spin. And amazingly, that piece of grass looks flat there. Yeah, you can just see the Ginetta, can't you, off to the right-hand side of your screen there. That looks flat, that piece of grass, but it's just at the wrong angle for the right height of the Ginetta. So the rear wheels are spinning, but it's going nowhere. So all of the cars won't do a full slowing down lap of the Grand Prix circuit. They'll make their way back into the rear entrance to the Grand Prix paddock. And then once all of the cars have taken the checkered flag, which by the look of things won't include the Ginetta unless it gets a shove, we'll then be able to confirm the results for you. So let's just confirm the results for you then, following round 7 of the 2024 GT Cup Championship. Paul Bailey and David Brabham take the win in the Brabham BT62 by over 18 seconds in the end from Ian Loggie and Richard Neary, who were second. And the winners of Group GT3 finished in 3rd place, Seamus Jennings and Greg Caton. 4th place goes to the way of the Group GTC leading car, Charlotte Gilbert and Tom Rawlings, with Miles Rudman finishing in 5th place. And the winner of Group GTH finished in 6th place, which was Matthew Higgins and Mikey Porter. Ray Harris was 7th, ahead of the pairing of Jodie Sloss and Rihanna O'Meara Hunt, and it was John Curry and Marcus Clutton that were 9th, with Stephen Walton and Chris Hart wrapping up the top 10. In 11th place, it was Charles Dawson and Seb Morris, with Doc Bush finishing in 12th place. I think James Townsend and Leona Theobald will still be classified in 13th, despite the Ginetta not taking the checkered flag. And the winning Group GTA went the way of Rupert Williams and John Ingram. Problems for Michael Arant and Jake Poole, they retired. Warren Gilbert was only doing the sprint race, so we didn't see him for long. He did set a lap time, though, that sets his grid position. And Chris Murphy had problems with the BMW. Hopefully he will be back out for the sprint race that is scheduled to take place later on this afternoon. So that's it from a very warm Brands Hatch. That's round 7 of the championship done. We will see round 8 of the championship later on this afternoon. It will all be brought to you live, and we are likely to be starting the stream around about 4:15 if everything goes to plan this afternoon. So from the whole team here from GT Cup, Brands Hatch and Butte Motorsport and Onside Productions, thanks for joining us for the pit stop race. We'll see you later on for the sprint race, round 8 of the championship. Goodbye.